So as you're coil building your ancient vessels, you've probably noticed that the clay, being soft and heavy and pliable, can achieve these wonderful shapes. But it's also struggling against gravity and time. So you have to be aware of a lot of things, especially the gravity and time part. This vertical shape is going to be a lot more achievable because of its narrow and tall proportions. You'll notice some of your classmates who have chosen more spherical shapes are experiencing a greater challenge getting those forms to stand up against gravity. So remember, to build inside of the diameter, you've given yourself all of these measurements. At 11 inches high, I should be 10.5 inches wide. And I think I got there. But I didn't build it exactly at that mark. And another thing I noticed last class, many of you are trying to make every course you put on here perfect. You're smoothing the inside, you're smoothing the outside. There's really no need to finish every layer before you finish building the thing. Just build the thing and then smooth it out later. The advantage of it being sticky and wet is to use your time to build and stick it together. Here we got 12 inches tall. So at this widest part, it should be about 11 inches wide. So I'm pretty much in this very general shape right there. You'll all notice that I lost my foot. And I can add that maybe later, flip it upside down, put a little cylinder on there, coil a little cylinder on the bottom when it's all said and done. So, we're fighting gravity, we're fighting time. Sometimes you just have to be patient, let it set up. This thing has been setting up for quite a while now. I did keep it covered. Notice like this would be a better time to go back and maybe deal with some of these textures, or you really want to make sure one coil is well blended into another coil. You have all these different moments. But this thing, the wall is not caving in. It's really kind of firm even, The skin's slightly damp, so it's going to weld together anything I'm smoothing. Rather than just using my finger, I could also be using a stick. And if you don't like all of these cracks, using this straight-edged rib that you all have in your kit, the inside I would definitely use the Kemper RV4 wooden rib. But once you get all the coils blended on the outside, I would use like this straight edge out here. And you can just trowel right over a lot of those crevices and cracks. And it's very, very little bit of a flex on this wall still. Even all this expansion down here, this thing almost fell over that first day. So I just stopped touching it. But I can go back in here and smooth all these cracks out before I even start building again. It'd probably be a good idea to go and tailor up your first day's work while you have this freshness in the clay. This is also going to let it firm up a little bit more for you so that your second day of building, it's not only going to be smoother and more shapely, but it's going to be a little bit stronger because you're going to allow it to breathe a little more. If the lip up here is not wet still, you want to cover that with maybe a damp paper towel and let that absorb a little bit more water so that you can build on it. Mine seems to be pretty sticky still. we're not going for perfect shapes here. You know, let these things sway, let them wobble a little bit. This pot's got plenty of gesture. It's not perfect. A hand-built pot should have a little bit of attitude in its posture. Identifying all these different parts with the foot and the hip and the body and the belly, the shoulder, the lip, the neck, all those human characteristics. You can exaggerate them a little bit and throw a hip out and pull a shoulder down, you know. Creates a little contrapposto. I think that's Italian for swag. Anyway, I think you get my point. Whether it's a finger or a stick, I might have to put this on time lapse because you guys will get bored just watching me do that. Imagine I've spent an hour doing that and I'm ready to build still. Well, shoot, I might just leave it because that's pretty cool just the way it is. Maybe one more over here. Alright. When you're rolling a coil, just make sure you've got a clean workspace. And fresh clay that's been well prepared. If I'm going to roll a coil out and I know that this still needs to absorb some water, I'm going to get those grooves. Fork. Got a nice little fork today. It's for a relish tray. I think that's like for pickles and olives. So just get that lip softening, waiting while you're rolling your coil. That can all be just marinating. So everything was working from a narrow foot up to a wider shoulder. And now as that shoulder tapers back in to the neck, as you see in this image, this form's got to start coming inward now. So there's just a slight adjustment in the way that I'm going to stick that on there. So many of you are sitting down while you're working. It's going to be a little bit more challenging from a seated position to do some of these things. So I'm going to go around the room today and just remind you constantly to stand up while you work on a coil pot, because you not only get aerial perspective, but it puts your body into a position where you have an advantage to control the direction that your walls are built. If you're sitting down, you kind of lose that vantage point and a little bit of that control. I'm still fastening this tapered edge of my coil. When I say tapered, it's just because I've flattened that round coil into a strap, and that strap is still thick on one side, but it's thinner on this other. So this tapered edge gets textured with the slip, and it's going to fasten to this thick lip here. But my thicker part of this coil is going to angle upward and inward, okay? And in order to do that, I'm just going to angle my hand. See how it's angled into the center? I don't want it angling out, and I don't want it even going straight up. I want it angling in. So I'm fastening this coil to the opposite side of the wall, okay? If I'm over here, it's going to angle towards myself, and then I'm building in the wrong direction. So if you want it to go in, you have to build it inward. If your pots keep going out, that means you're doing it wrong. You got to change something. My advice would be to stand up. Another thing I've noticed, a lot of people get so fixated on fixing all of this right now and starting to thin these walls. You can't really work on that part yet until this becomes completed. So, don't forget that. The lip of the pot, or in this case, it's the shoulder, but this upper ring of this coil, once this ring gets completed, I'm going to blend that coil together. And that completion of that course structurally interlocks this whole shape. And now I can challenge the shape by working on the smoothing of the coil or the thinning of the wall, and then it will react and respond within a circularity kind of a response. If you don't complete that course and you start mushing it and smearing it and thinning it, then it's going to tweak and buckle and shift your shape from being round to being something else. So here I'm smoothing the soft clay into the firm clay that's already been setting up for a few days. In your cases, it'll be just 2 days that your pot has set and waited for you. So now it's firmly connected outside and it's firmly connected inside, but I still have a thick coil up here. So now I'm going to pinch, but I'm not going to pinch on the wall that's near me. If I pinch here, the angle of my fingers is going to pull the wall out. That's the wrong way. I want it to go in. So I'm going to put my fingers on the other side. Now look, they're angling towards the center of the pot. And that way when I pinch, and there's a little bit of a squinch going on with this pinch, I can raise that wall. I'm thinning the wall. I'm bringing it towards myself, or towards the center of this form. So just putting yourself in the right place in relationship to where your pot's at can give you a lot of advantages. You know, and this also gives me the ability to look and see how well I'm doing with keeping things centered as related to the center of my floor, you know. If I need to tilt my pot this way a little bit, I can tweak it and kind of straighten it up a little bit. If you can't see your pot from above, you lose a lot of insight. No pun intended. So it may get more and more difficult to get your hand in here the smaller and smaller this gets. So before I add that next coil, which is going to bring this diameter even smaller, I need to resolve a lot of things inside. I need to resolve the texture, I need to resolve the connections, I need to make sure that the shape is where I want it, and I need to make sure my proportions are all there. So, going back to my scale, 15 inches high, I need to be 4.7 inches wide in my neck. So let me see how tall I'm getting. I'm at 14, so at 1 more inch I'll be 15, which is going to be where my palm is. And I need to be 4.5 right now. I'm looking like I'm 5.5. So this next 1 inch, it's got to close another inch. And I'll still be able to fit my hand in at 1 inch, but just in anticipation of all of that, I think I can probably just work with my wooden rib and get that wall to thin and keep moving that wall in as it thins. It's gonna, maybe even without adding a coil, I could probably achieve both the height of 15 inches and the diameter of 4.5 inches. 4.7. So I'm smearing the shoulder up into my palm. I'm using my right hand, that's my dominant hand, with this rib. And the curve of the rib is smoothing the wall from yesterday's work, which is a little firm, and moving that curve up into the palm and through that fresh, soft coil that I just made. And if I just look in here, I can see how that curve just rolls straight down that wall. And my connection looks really tight. I got some gaps in there. Maybe take some of the smooth clay, soft clay, fill any gaps if you got a hole, or if maybe when your coil is starting to detach. Just check that out. Okay, so that wall in there is smooth. Some of these pots that we're making are storage containers. You don't want food to get stuck in the cracks. You don't want bacteria to grow in there, so smooth that wall out. Usually a smooth wall with this rib is going to result in a nice curved shape as well. Okay, so I'm satisfied with the inside. That didn't get much taller. Still right around 14, maybe 14.5. So I still have to go up an inch. And I have to go in probably a good inch now too. So this coil, probably not going to make it. So I'll just make a new one. now that that course has been completed, I can start working that soft coil into the shoulder. I'll usually get the outside connected. Make sure that the inside's joined well as well. Again, this coil is way thicker than my wall, so I've got a lot of pinching to do. But before I start pinching all that, I'm just making sure that its attachments are taken care of, both inside and out. Alright, so this has got to go in a little bit, and then from that 4.5 inch diameter it starts moving up. Alright? So, let's see what diameter I have now. I'm at 5 with my outer dimension. So this just has to go in a little bit. And this has to get thin a little. So I'm going to bring my thumbs together. This is going to be a tough one to see. I'm kind of doing this. So my fingers are inside, they're hooking under the shoulder, and I've got a ring of clay in between my hands, which will become like this lip sitting on top of the shoulder. So it's actually narrowing the diameter while thinning the wall and then raising a wall off of a smaller neck. You can kind of see it starting to shape up now. Getting close. So I'm at my 4.5 diameter. And I'm at 15 inches tall right here, which is pretty much where I want to be. Okay? Still all sorts of rude and crude on the outside, which, you know, I may take it or leave it. You know, I could smooth this out in the end and make it as slick as that, or I could just kind of work with all of this funky texture. And that's totally up to you guys. You can leave some evidence of your hands and tools and inconsistencies and texture, and kind of explore that for whatever qualities that might hold. Or you can try and scrape it and smooth it. Just know, like, even this is a little soft still. The bottom's not too soft. I can put some pressure on this, and I'm starting to get some nice smooth textures. If I keep working at this, I can make this as smooth as that image. But if I use this up here today, it's going to collapse everything I've done. You don't need to smooth this today. You can smooth it another day. What you do need to do today is focus on building the rest of that pot. So day 1, day 2. And I'm going to put it on time lapse to get there.